What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo team, talking some college football DFS ahead of some Tuesday night action. It is November the 23rd. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. Bringing you behind the glass today, let's take a look at our player data tool where we can find all kinds of usage statistics for these players. Try to parlay this over for DFS. It is just a 2-game slate, and this kicks off with Buffalo taking on Ball State. Pretty competitive game overall. Ball State is a 6.5 points favorite here. The total is 59.5 points. And right away, Buffalo, compared to last year, they're playing much, much faster, but they're still fairly run heavy, just a 42% pass rate. Ball State, they're a lot slower. They're actually below 70 plays per game, but they still are pretty pass heavy. 68.5 passing plays per game. Actually, 68.5 plays per game, 51.5% pass rate. At the quarterback position for Buffalo, Kyle Van Treese is out for the season, so we move forward with Matt Myers, who still is not very expensive, $5,300. Myers is somewhat mobile, 98 rushing yards again. He's only played limited snaps this year, so there just isn't a huge sample on him. And last week, we saw Myers struggle a little bit, but there's always going to be upside with this Buffalo offense just because of how much they actually are running plays. Like, they're just one of the fastest teams in the country right now. So Myers, with his limited mobility and the high volume that he should see as a passer, even though they are a run-heavy team, this could be enough at just $5,300 to get you there. Ball State certainly does not play strong defense. They're particularly bad against the run, but we've also seen them struggle against the pass at times. So on a 2-game slate, Matt Myers is definitely viable as a cheaper option in stacks. And you have the alpha too, if you would like. Chan Williams is $5,400, only 5 targets in their last game, but he had back-to-back 12-target games prior to that. He averages 74.5 yards per game, 8.6 targets, which is pretty strong for a guy at $5,400. The wide receiver 2 is Dominic Johnson. Jamari Gassett is the wide receiver 3. At that point, neither of them are expensive, so $4K for Johnson, $3.7 for Gassett. I would rather just find the money for Johnson if possible. And then you have Stevens, seldom used down there. He's not somebody to look to. The run game is where we typically like to target Buffalo. Dylan McDuffie has emerged as their lead back. You had Kevin Marks, who went down in the middle of the season. He's since returned from injury, but just a change of pace role for him. He's 11 carries combined over their last 2 games. Ron Cook, he scored a touchdown last week through the air, but still just 8 carries over their last 2 games. Both these guys compared to McDuffie, it's 11 carries, 8 carries to 50 for McDuffie, who's averaging 88.5 rushing yards per game. Some of that depressed because he was not the lead back to begin the year. Kevin Marks was, but he's fully emerged into that role, and he is one of the better plays on the slate. Moving over to the Ball State side, the team with a higher implied team total north of 30. Drew Plitt has struggled a bit this year. We've seen a decent amount of rushing. He's somewhat mobile with 148 yards, and he's passing the ball frequently. It's just that Ball State hasn't gotten off as many plays as they did a year ago, and Plitt has always been a guy that is middling to maybe a little above average in terms of efficiency. But this year, he's only averaging 188 yards on 30.5 attempts, which just is not very good. But however, you look at the Buffalo defense, this is one of Plitt's best matchups all year. And the game is competitive enough where you could still target him in stacks. The main issue is Justin Hall is hurt, and we don't have an update on his status. He just did not warm up for the last game at the last second. Nobody knew ahead of time, and then missed the game. And again, we just won't know until we see Justin Hall warming up, or maybe we don't see him warming up. If Hall is out there, he's clearly one of the best receivers on the entire slate. Extremely active in the run game. He had at least 4 carries in each of his 4 prior games before missing. And then he does average 7.8 targets per game and 60 yards through the air. So he's just so active in both phases that he's one of the better receiver plays on the board if healthy. If he's out, though, Johannes Tyler and Jayshon Jackson worked as the clear wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. Johannes 9 targets, Jayshon 10 targets. Jayshon has a pretty significant lead in terms of yardage on the year, but Johannes Tyler is a 4-target edge over Jayshon Jackson. They're both very close. Jackson's a little bit cheaper. He would be the preference for me, but you can't really go wrong with either. Cody Rudy is their tight end. He's listed at running back. You saw 4 targets for him in their last game, but he's still only averaging 2.7 per game. And then the wide receiver 3 was actually Hassan Littles. He played ahead of some other guys like Trevor Holt and Jordan Williams, who I thought might play a little bit more. But if you want just a cheap dart throw and Justin Hall's out, it would be Hassan Littles. In the run game, what was formerly a timeshare between Will Jones and Carson Steele is now just the Carson Steele show. He is receiving all of the work, 3 targets in their last game, at least 20 carries and 3 straight. Good efficiency with him as well. Again, he's only averaging 14.5 opportunities on the year. That's on a per game basis, but over 70 yards. And now we've seen that opportunity change. Buffalo allows over 225 rushing yards per game, and Steele is even cheaper than McDuffie as a near touchdown favorite. He's one of the best plays on the slate as well. Going to our second game, we have Western Michigan taking on Northern Illinois. This one has a slightly better total at 62.5, a 3.5 point spread in favor of Western Michigan. Both teams are very fast and both teams are run heavy. Northern Illinois even run heavier than Western Michigan, but this is a spot that looks like it's going to be up tempo. Northern Illinois has struggled on defense. So a spot where Western Michigan can potentially gain their footing. And Caleb Ellaby, he benefits from a 33 points implied team total. Northern Illinois has struggled on defense. The main issue with Ellaby is he's just not very mobile. 53 yards, that's fine. At least it's not a 0, but he's the least mobile signal caller on the slate. As a passer, he's extremely efficient. He's averaging 252 yards on 29 opportunities. That's fewer opportunities per game than like a Drew Plitt for Ball State, but just far more efficient. So Ellaby is certainly in play. Easy to stack too. Sky Moore and Jalen Hall are your top two options. Corey Crooms was the wide receiver 3, but he went down with a severe injury last week, and they have not updated his status. I doubt they will. It's just a conference where there's not a lot of injury updates, but if you go back and watch that injury, and I would not recommend doing so, I have no possible idea how Corey Crooms would be playing today. I would not recommend watching it, but it is severe. Anyway, Sky Moore is the wide receiver 1, not even close. Over 10 targets per game for him, over 100 yards per game for him. I think he's a clear priority if you can get to him. Jalen Hall should be also in line for a much larger opportunity. He was 3rd on the team in targets, but now he's in line for the 2nd most targets. He should be working ahead of Bryce Nunley or Brett Borski, the tight end. These are just ancillary options in the offense. So Jalen Hall would become a much clearer play. Nunley operated as the wide receiver 3 without Crooms, but only 1 target for him. Looks like he just might not be as involved, but he is very cheap for what it's worth. In the run game, Ladarius Jefferson and Sean Tyler split time 50-50. Even though Tyler's been far more efficient, he actually has over 100 more rushing yards on the year than Ladarius Jefferson, and he has 30 less carries. But for whatever reason, they will not give him the lead back role. Jefferson's actually outcarried Tyler in the last 2 games, and the receiving role, both of them don't have a huge role in this area of the game, but both are involved as receivers as well, when in the rare occasion they do throw to the backs. But Jefferson being much, much cheaper, he's easier to slide into lineups, but Tyler can't be discounted either. Northern Illinois allows nearly 220 rush yards per game, so both are strong plays. Rocky Lombardi, he's the most mobile signal caller on the slate, but a lot of that has come in just a couple games. He actually hasn't used his rushing as much of late, which I think is a mild concern here, but Lombardi is the most mobile. He averages 210 passing yards per game on 27 attempts, so he's been really efficient there too. Western Michigan is perhaps the best defense we have on the slate, so it's definitely not an easy matchup for Lombardi by any means, but he's definitely in play. In the backfield, Jevion Ducker, he's on the platforms as Jay Ducker. He's their lead back right now, but we've recently seen this become increasingly split. Ontario Brown's returned from injury. He carried the ball 3 times in each of the last 2 games, but more importantly, Clint Ratkovich has played more and more, and Clint Ratkovich is the clear pass-catching back. Jevion Ducker doesn't have a role in that area of the game whatsoever. And Ratkovich has received more carries of late too, which just puts Ducker like a little tier behind Steele and McDuffie, but he's still a good play. He has over 20 carries in 3 of the last 4. And again, Western Michigan, they have a better run defense than most teams on this slate, but certainly beatable. We also don't know the status of Harrison Whaley. He was their lead back to begin the year. No update on his status, but I wouldn't expect him to play at this point in the year, but just if Whaley's warming up, that would be bad for Ducker, so just make sure. In the past game, Tyrese Ritchie also went down with a severe injury 3 weeks ago. No update on his status, but wouldn't expect him. If he does play, just maybe bump down Trayvon Rudolph and Cole Tucker a little bit. But Trayvon Rudolph and Cole Tucker are the top 2 receiving options in this offense without Ritchie. And Rudolph had 35 targets in 2 straight games, but then fell back down to 5 targets in their last game. I think a lot of that has to do with Cole Tucker actually operating as their wide receiver 1 for large stretches of time, but then he began the year injured. So we've only seen Cole Tucker for 3 games this year, and he's actually been very involved. So he's somebody I think you could look to as a middling option. He operates over the middle, little slot receiver, so there's not a ton of upside for big plays, but the consistency is there. The wide receiver 3 is split between Messiah Travis and Mohamed Torre. I think both are just pure GPP options at this point. But that'll do it for the slate. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comment section who your favorite plays are. Would love to hear it. I'm Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you guys. Good luck, and we'll see you again next time.